Happy Monday, everybody, and welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. Have we got any transfer updates? Kind of, I suppose. Still not a great deal happening with regards to Arsenal and Viktor Gyökeres, as far as we're aware anyway. And the longer this goes on, the longer the frustration goes on. But I do think we'll get our man in the end. As I've repeatedly said, has there been a development over the course of the weekend that makes me more confident in that? We'll get into that. Mikel Arteta's first press conference of pre-season. We're going to talk Gyökeres. We're going to talk Zubimendi. We're going to talk Xavi Simons. And we're going to rubbish some rumours that sparked quite the meltdown online over the course of the last couple of days. All of that and loads more to come on today's episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. Let's get into it. Hey, everybody. How are we doing? Welcome back to the pod. Hope you're all good. Hope you're all well. It's the start of the school summer holidays, which means that people's routines are changing. I didn't have to shoot out of bed this morning and get my son ready to take him to school because he's off. And in fact, Antonio, give him a wave. He's here with me. So I've got company for today's podcast as we work our way through today's stories. As I said, we're going to talk Viktor Gyökeres. We're going to talk Martin Zubimendi. Mikel has been speaking about him in his press conference. We're also going to talk Xavi Simons, and we're going to rubbish some rumours that, as I say, caused quite the meltdown. So the school holidays have started. I don't know what we're going to do to occupy the children for the next however many weeks. What is it, 6, 7 weeks, something like that. Probably going to have the arrival of our third one at some point during this summer holidays as well. So that adds to it. Plus the season's kicking off. Plus there's pre-season games now to start covering. It is all systems go in the Symeou household. But you know what? We love it. Let's crack on and let's keep pushing. When it comes to the pre-season games, I'm interested to know. Obviously, we play AC Milan on Wednesday. I'm going to be at home watching the game. And I was wondering if you guys would be interested in a watch along of the game against AC Milan. If enough of you are, and leave your thoughts on it as a comment, not on the live stream, so that I can revisit them. If enough of you say yes to the watch along, we'll do it. Should we do it? I'll be here. I'll be watching the game. We can bring you a kind of loose commentary of it for maybe those of you that don't have the ability to watch it because you're at work or whatever. We can bring you a kind of loose commentary of the game. We can discuss some of the key points and stuff as well through it. So yeah, I think that'd be quite interesting. If you guys are game, I'm game. So yeah, let me know. Okay, should we start working our way through today's stories then? Nothing like it's a weird one today, right? Because I got up this morning and I'm like, maybe we're going to get like an Ornstein bomber or a Fabrizio Romano post, just something with a little bit of weight behind it that would suggest that we're really proceeding and moving forward with the Viktor Gyökeres stuff. That hasn't come yet. No, in my luck, it will come as soon as we publish this episode of the pod. I wondered if we were going to get or are going to get a Christian Mosquera announcement today. We might. Not entirely sure about that. But if you are interested in finding out a little bit more about Christian Mosquera, what a wonderful and easy segue / plug that was. You can go over to the Chronicles of a Gooner on Patreon and you can click on our Christian Mosquera video. And by signing up, you'll get access to that, of course. What I haven't done yet, I completely forgot because I had a really busy weekend. As I mentioned, I was at a wedding and stuff. I haven't made the Noni Madueke one available to everybody, and that signing has been announced. So I've gone against my promise there. So what I'm going to do, in fact, I'm not going to do it right now because it will just end up to being some dead air on the podcast. But yeah, we'll do that as soon as we finish here. Let me make a note. Make Madueke video public. And that'll be for the next 24 hours. Okay. After that, it goes back to being a patrons only piece. But you can get access to those videos way ahead of time by signing up. The link is in the description, as I say. Right. Lots of you seem to be interested in the watch along. So we'll do that. I'm washing my hair that night on the watch along stuff. If you don't want to watch it, you don't have to watch it. No problem. If enough of you want it, I will do it. If enough of you want it, I will do it. Okay, shall we start? I'll tell you what we're going to start with. Let's start with the new away kit, shall we? This was officially announced this morning. We've all seen pictures of it going around for a long, long time. Okay, we've all seen images of it floating around on the internet. We all knew what it was going to look like. The Thunderbolt pattern is a sort of a sort of tribute to the 1990s, where we used to have that quite a bit in our kit. Listen, I quite like this kit, but this for me should be a third kit. I'm always a believer that Arsenal's away kits should be yellow and blue, predominantly yellow with blue, yellow shirts, blue shorts. That is what the tradition of Arsenal demands. That's what I'm really kind of keen to see us go back to. Obviously, we're trying to be creative. We're trying to change it up every season. We're trying to bring new things into play. I remember a time, right, where you had a kit for 2 years or sometimes even longer. And now we seem to change them every single year. And I get it's about maximizing incomes and revenues and keeping the designs fresh. I mean, after all, we are known as Merch FC. So you can understand why they're doing it. But for me, get a yellow and blue away kit, man. That's the way it should be. And if you want to have this as a third kit, I've got no issue with it. It's not that I don't like the kit. I can't ever be fully on board with any Arsenal away kit that isn't yellow and blue, apart from the black one. The black and gold one was probably the only Arsenal away kit that I really, really kind of fell in love with that wasn't of that yellow and blue combination. That was something special. It really, really was. Obviously, we had that black kit last season, not quite as nice for me as the one that we had the season prior with the black and gold. So if we are going to pick one out of the away kits that weren't yellow and blue to kind of move forward with, it would have been that for me. Listen, that kit could have been our away kit, I reckon, for 5 years, the black and gold one, and people would have still been buying it. It was in really high demand. You couldn't find it anywhere. I remember trying to find one for my boy, and it took me ages to find one. And so, yeah, our third kit is white as well, as is being pointed out in the chat. We've seen some leaks of that one. I'm sure we'll get some official confirmation on that sooner rather than later. But yeah, it doesn't really do it for me, if I'm being honest. The white one, I don't like white Arsenal kits. It looks like a Tottenham kit, doesn't it? So yeah. Anyway, Merch FC strike again with the away kit. Look, I don't hate it, but it's not my preferred color scheme. So it's going to be a little bit difficult for me to get fully behind it. Right, let's talk Mikel Arteta's first press conference. Of course, he has been speaking to the media ahead of that game against AC Milan, which is scheduled to take place on Wednesday. And he was asked lots of questions about lots of different things. He held the conference at the Singapore National Stadium ahead of that match. As I say, he was asked about training there, the state of the squad, how the new players are settling in, the potential for further signings and more. He talked loads about kind of building that connection with the supporters. Mikel's always really good at that stuff, isn't he? Talking about connections and relationships and love and passion and all the rest of it. He said that the weather, or he sort of hinted that the weather's been a bit of a challenge. There is a challenge, obviously, that comes with that. He says that the team were not able to train in the morning, so they're going to have to adapt to those situations as well. I mean, look, I get the appeal in these tours. I get what the club do them for, right? So they're a great marketing tool. It's great to go out and connect and boost your profile with audiences on the other side of the world. There will obviously be a big following of Arsenal Football Club in that part of the world anyway. And Arsenal haven't been to that part of the world for quite a long time because there's been a real focus with our preseason tours on the United States. Understandable. We've got United States ownership. We've got a huge fan base over there. All of that makes sense. But obviously they felt it was time to just shake it up a little bit and do something a little bit differently. But I mean, you can't control the weather, obviously, right? You can't. We're not God. We don't have that power. But I think it's not ideal, is it, when you go out on a sort of preseason tour with the hope of putting the hard yards in training-wise, getting ready, getting people up to speed fitness-wise, and then you've got issues like the weather. It's kind of not what you want, really, is it? Because it disrupts the plans. And obviously, there'll be a very meticulous plan in place. around getting these players up to speed ahead of the new season. So, yeah, let's see. 3 of the 4 summer signings that we've made so far have travelled with the group. Christian Norgard, Kepa Arrizabalaga, and Martin Zubimendi are all part of the squad. Noni Madueke, as we mentioned yesterday, not part of this tour, but that's because he's been at the Club World Cup with Chelsea, and it's completely understandable. Noni Madueke needs a break. He needs a rest. And if we're going to get the best out of him next season, we need him to be refreshed. Now, I don't know if Noni Madueke wanted to go on the tour. I don't know if he was willing to kind of put his break to one side and say, you know what, I'll push for it just for this summer because I'm joining a new club. I want to hit the ground running. I want to get to know everybody. But, I think if Arsenal, as is reported, did really push for him to have the break, I think that was the right course of action. There'll be a couple of weeks at the end when Noni Madueke can come back into the picture, can get to know everyone. He knows a lot of the boys already. He knows a lot of the group already. So I don't think it's as big an issue for him as it might be for someone else. Also, people say that, well, how fit will he be when he returns? Actually, Noni Madueke wouldn't have lost anywhere near as much fitness as some of the other players because he didn't have a long break. And even if he has 2 weeks off, how much fitness has he lost in that 2 weeks? Is it more than he can sort of make up over the course of the end of our preseason campaign? I think he'll be fine for the start of the season, but only if he has this break. Mikel was asked about, of course, bringing in new signings. And he said that the new arrivals have all added a kind of fresh impetus to the squad. He said it's like shaking the tree again and bringing in new faces. They bring excitement and new energy as well. And everybody feels like their height has to go to a different level. And that's what we're seeking. When asked about transfers and getting people in through the door early, he said, yeah, look, of course, ideally, you want these done on day one in pre-season. He says, we've done very, very well so far. I'm very pleased with the way the club is supporting the necessities and improvements that we required within the team. He said, Andrea and the club have done an excellent job trying to push everything forward. There's still a long time to go in the window. We have a lot of hope that we can still improve the team. Now, he was also asked about Viktor Gyökeres, but I don't expect the club to include that bit in their breakdown. Why? Because why would they, right? They don't want to fuel speculation. They don't want Sporting to turn around and say, why are you talking about our player when a deal hasn't been fully agreed, etc., etc.? Because Sporting are proving already to be very, very, very difficult customers. So he said in response to a question about Viktor Gyökeres, I can't talk about players that haven't joined up with us yet. Yet being the interesting word, and the word that everybody in the live chat box and everybody on social media has picked up on. This is going to happen. Arsenal are going to sign Viktor Gyökeres. And that's a lovely segue onto that story, because what I don't want to do is sort of go through every single word of the press conference. You guys can go and read the transcript on arsenal.com, or you can watch the press conference. Haters TV have posted a video of it, so you can go out there and check that out if you're interested. But just in terms of the Viktor Gyökeres stuff, I'm still incredibly confident that Arsenal get this deal done. We heard some reports, didn't we, over the course of the weekend? I referenced something in my intro that sent everybody into meltdown, and that was links to Manchester United. Viktor Gyökeres is not going to Manchester United. He does not want to go to Manchester United, and Manchester United are not actively pursuing a deal for him because they know that. They know that he wants to go to Arsenal. They know that his heart is set on Arsenal. We talked about yesterday, what the delay could be down to. And I said, in truth, I don't know, but given Sporting have seemingly moved the goalposts before, given they seem to want some sort of guaranteed, if you like, add-ons that are very, very likely to be triggered, that feels like the hold-up point. And although, it's very easy for us to say, just pay the money and get the damn deal done. And I do, to a point, feel like that. There's obviously something in these negotiations that Arsenal really, really don't like, that they really, really don't like, because they've just gone and paid 52 million quid for Noni Madueke, right? And in a lot of people's estimations, that is over the top money for a player that represents quite a bit of risk. Now, I know Arsenal are really big on the signing. We know that Mikel Arteta was really pushing for that one. And we know that Arsenal believe that in terms of the fee, looking around at the market, they got a good deal. But the point I'm trying to make is that if you spend £52 million on Noni Madueke, surely you do not have a problem with bridging the gap between where you're at and where Sporting are at for the sake of what, 2, 3, 4 million euros, whatever it is. There's been multiple reports, so it's difficult for me to know exactly what that difference in valuation looks like, and you know what the structure of the add-ons in terms of the way they'd like them to be, you know what that means or what that looks like. So it's a difficult one, isn't it, to kind of put your finger on why. And obviously, the less information you have, the more you allow your kind of imagination and your mind to run wild, and the more frustrated you get as a result of that. But as I say, I think this is going to be done over the next few days. I've been saying that for a while, so I appreciate that there'll be people out there listening to this thinking, oh, here we go. He said that the other day. The truth is, I don't know what the holdup is, so I'm not going to speculate any further on that. As I said on yesterday's show, I'm not going to point the finger at the club and say, it's your fault. That's why this is not being done. I'm also not going to point at Sporting, because I completely understand why they would want to extract the maximum they can from a player of Viktor Gyökeres' stature. I'm not going to blame the player. I'm not going to blame Andrea Berta. I'm just going to sit back and wait and see how this pans out, because none of us really know. And if people knew, you know, we wouldn't be getting contradictory reports left, right, and center coming out of Portugal, for starters. But second of all, none of our guys here in the UK that are usually very, very plugged into Arsenal Football Club seem to have much detail around what the delay in this negotiation is. And if you're not reporting, it's because you don't know. So that's not to discredit anyone. It's just the point of, if they don't know, then how the hell am I going to know? And how the hell are you going to know? So let's just relax about it. But the rumours linking him with Manchester United, complete and utter nonsense. He is not going there. There's nothing to worry about on that front. It's just about the two clubs finally reaching that agreement that it feels like we've been waiting for such a long time. Right, we're going to take a really, really short pause. When we come back, we are going to talk Xavi Simons. We're going to talk a little bit more about some of the stories doing the rounds in the Arsenal sphere at the moment. And we're going to take a load of your questions from the live chat as well. In fact, while I take this very short pause, I'm going to make that Noni Madueke video available to everyone over on Patreon, so you can check that out. Right, short pause, back in just a moment.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
That's right. Like and subscribe. If you haven't done so already, make sure, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, you've left us a review. It is very, very much appreciated, and it really, really does help. Right, what we're going to do, in fact, to give you guys an idea of what the Noni Madueke video is all about, I'm going to share a clip of it, and you'll be able to get a feel for what that video is all about while I make it available to everyone, and you can go over to Patreon and check it out. Here's a preview of our Noni Madueke scouting video, now that that deal is finally official. Clearly, first and foremost, I think a very good dribbler of the ball. And I've said for a long, long time that that's something that we're missing. There are similarities to Bukayo Saka in that he likes to come in off that right-hand side onto his left foot. And he's got, you know, a real confidence about him. He does, you know, back himself. He always wants to take the shot on. He's always looking for that far corner. He's happy to glide past people, as you saw there, on the outside as well as on the inside. So Noni Madueke is a player I don't think that lacks in confidence. And I hope that the reaction to this transfer isn't going to damage. There you go. That's a preview of our Noni Madueke scouting video, which I've just made public on our Patreon page. That'll be the case for the next 24 hours or so. Go over, check it out. Let me know what you think about it. Just hold fire on some of your questions in the live chat, because I will come to those in a minute. I just want to cover a couple more bits and pieces off. And once we've done that, then we'll pick those up. So just hold fire on them a minute. Right, let's talk Xavi Simons, because he's been linked with a move to Arsenal. Of course, the ads come up. Lots of reports. Arsenal could turn to Xavi Simons if they can't sign Eberechi Eze. Now, this wasn't the source of the story, arsenalnews.co.uk. It's just the first article that came up when I very quickly Googled it. But lots of people are saying, lots of people are reporting that the agent of Xavi Simons has been offering him to Arsenal and to other clubs as well. So there's a good chance that RB Leipzig move him on over the course of this summer. Whether that will be to Arsenal remains to be seen. I still think and believe that Eberechi Eze is A, the better option, and B, Arsenal's preferred option. The question is, can Arsenal get a deal done? Now, the interesting thing about this is that if Arsenal are struggling to meet Crystal Palace's demands or don't want to meet Crystal Palace's demands in terms of that release clause, which is rumored to be 60 million plus 8 million in add-ons, then I find it difficult to believe that they'd be able to kind of get Xavi Simons out of RB Leipzig. Now, I guess the positive side on the Simons links is that RB Leipzig are clearly actively okay with him moving on and looking to push him out the door, because if they weren't, his agent wouldn't be going around and offering him to everybody, right? There's clearly a desire on RB Leipzig's part to move the player on and to cash in on him at this stage. But is that a deal that would cost much less than what you'd pay for Eberechi Eze, given Xavi Simons is standing in the game and how heavily he's been linked with some of the biggest clubs on the continent recently? I mean, there probably will be a difference because you take away that kind of Premier League premium. Obviously, when there's no release clause, it's easy. It's kind of more open to negotiation. Whereas Crystal Palace having that release clause, they kind of have that to hide behind and make things that little bit more difficult for the Gunners. But I don't think this would cost significantly less. In which case, I'm much in favour of Arsenal just go and get Eberechi Eze then, rather than, I believe, rolling the dice on Xavi Simons, because I think he's a really talented player. But the thing that really kind of appealed to me about Eze was his kind of multifunctionality. I think that's the thing for me. I'd argue, I guess, that Xavi Simons can do a lot of that as well. But I just feel like being settled in the Premier League, having the history with Arsenal, being a Londoner, getting the culture, understanding it, being obviously very, very close with a lot of the players that we already have, and having that sort of bond already, the camaraderie, etc., etc. I just think that Eze is more likely to hit the ground running and have that immediate impact that Arsenal need. And we're at a stage in our development now where it's not about building for the future anymore. That is something that the club have to keep in mind. They have to focus. We've got some really young players in our group. Like, you even think about the ages of like Bukayo Saka, Gabriel Martinelli, William Saliba, Miles Lewis-Skelly. These are all first teamers, right? That are of very, very young ages. We've just signed Ethan Nwaneri down to a new contract. Max Dowman's coming through. My point is that I don't think Arsenal have to be so focused on the youngsters now. Like, they're obviously making moves in the academy as well, signing young players to kind of bolster us in that department. I think that side of things is taking care of itself, and the future's really bright for us there. And therefore, for me, it's about the here and now. And someone like Eberechi Eze, a bit like Viktor Gyökeres when we've been discussing him, would be for the here and now, and he's exactly what we need. Just moving on and circling back to the Viktor Gyökeres stuff very, very quickly before we come on to take your questions. It has emerged, Fabrizio Romano was reporting this, that Sporting are closing in on their Gyökeres replacement, Luis Suarez, not that Luis Suarez, from Almeria. It sounds like he's got a 40 million euro release clause. He's been the top scorer in Spain's Segunda Division last season. He scored 27 goals in 41 games. It says in the report that Sporting are still playing hardball with Arsenal, but they are closing in on an agreement for the Almeria striker. They're not going to have to pay that release clause, by the way. They're going to be able to get him for a lot less. That's the advantages of going and plucking him from a club like Almeria. I think he can do really, really well in Portugal. Luis Suarez has been someone that I've been aware of for a little bit in terms of the volume of goals he's been scoring in Spain's second tier. But yeah, I think with Sporting closing in on him, a lot of people have kind of put 2 and 2 together and maybe got to 5 and are now saying, well, the fact that we are seeing Sporting closing on him means surely they're ready now to just relent a little bit and back down a little bit in the negotiations for Viktor Gyökeres. Let me tell you this. I do not believe that the hold up in this Gyökeres to Arsenal thing has been because Sporting have been trying to line their ducks up. Like, I just don't think that's the case. Does Sporting think that they can get a better deal for Luis Suarez out of Almeria without having had that big money coming through the door for Viktor Gyökeres? Maybe. But I would argue that Almeria's position dictates that they would need to do a deal, at the first point that Sporting make a reasonable offer. So some people are saying, well, this has been the holdup, this has been the delay, and now we're going to see progress. I don't think this is as important in the Gyökeres to Arsenal saga as some people are making out, because I think a club of Sporting's means, with that money clearly about to come through the door for Viktor Gyökeres, whether it's in or not, I still think that they get a deal like this done regardless. So I don't think it's as big a deal. But a lot of people seem to believe that this is kind of the tipping point. This is the moment now where the Arsenal's thing with Gyökeres can accelerate, and maybe you're going to see Sporting just wind it in a little bit in terms of their approach and their insistence on getting a certain amount of money because they're closing in on their replacement. I don't know. Right, look, short pause. When we come back, your questions for the remainder of the show. We'll do about 10, 15 minutes of Q&A. So start getting them in. Pop a Q at the beginning of your question. Even if you've already put the question in the chat box, do me a favor. Send it in again, because I will probably have missed it and it'll probably be lost in the chaos that is the live chat. Right, let's do that right after this. Don't forget to leave a like on the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please do leave us a review. All of that amazing stuff really, really does help. Okay, let's go into the chat box. I'm a real gunner, says Harry. I think that Sporting have seen what Liverpool are paying for Ekitike and are trying to up the price. It could be the case. Again, as I said earlier on in the show, I don't know the ins and outs. I don't know for sure what the delay in this negotiation is. But what I will say is Ekitike is far younger. Ekitike is a player who is viewed as someone with a really high ceiling, with a lot of potential. And we know, because we've seen it pan out this way time and time again, in the modern day transfer market, potential seems to carry more weight in terms of impacting the price than what you've actually done in your career to date does. And I think that Liverpool clearly don't have much of an issue with Eintracht Frankfurt's demands, because there hasn't really been this long drawn out negotiation process. People keep comparing us and saying, well, look at Liverpool. They've got this deal done super quick, whereas Arsenal are dragging their heels and this is taking months and months and months. And I understand that to a degree, but it depends on where the negotiations start, right? If you go in and Frankfurt want, let's say, 90 million euros, and your top line in terms of what you're willing to pay is like 80 million euros, there isn't that much of a gap to bridge. And therefore, in theory, the negotiations shouldn't be as long and as drawn out. And, it's less of a jump to make. So I think that you end up with those negotiations moving quite quickly. In Arsenal's case, and we don't know exactly what Sporting were demanding at the start of this summer, but we know that like 12 months ago, they wanted 100 million euros for him. That was his release clause. So it feels like there's been a bigger gap in the two valuations of the two clubs, which maybe explains why the negotiations have taken longer than what Liverpool's have for Ekitike. But that doesn't mean they should have taken this long. So I agree with people when they voice their frustrations and concern about that. But listen, Ekitike and Gyökeres, they're not the same player. There's so many factors that differentiate between the two of them. I don't think that Sporting can hold that up as a reason to now demand more money for Hugo Ekitike. And if they do that, having agreed a sort of fee in principle with Arsenal with regards to what the overall package is going to look like, then they're negotiating in bad faith. And there's a part of me that, as much as I want Viktor Gyökeres, and as much as I want this deal to be done quickly, as much as I wanted it to be done before we went out to Asia, there's a part of me that thinks, no, don't let Federico Varandas and Sporting Lisbon push you around. So I think there's a bit of that. I think there's a bit of pride here. I think there's a bit of that getting in the way. And I get where you're coming from in terms of your comment on why the Ekitike thing, I beg your pardon, would be impactful on the Sporting and Arsenal negotiations. But I don't think that's acceptable if that's what Sporting are using to delay this. Sri Kugun says, Harry, providing that we bring in Eze, do you believe it would be better to sell Trossard and potentially get another winger, or to keep Trossard and do no further additions? I can't see Arsenal bringing in Eze and then a winger as well. I just can't see it. And with Leandro Trossard, you're going to not get a great deal of money for him at the moment because he's going into the final year of his contract, his age, etc., etc. So for me, it comes down to the question of, if Arsenal go and invest big now on Eberechi Eze, on top of what they've already done, on top of what they're expected to do for Viktor Gyökeres, are they going to go and spend big again? No. And so if they're only going to spend what they bring in for Leandro Trossard, which will probably be something between 15 and 20 million euros at the maximum, what are you going to get for that money? And are they going to be better than Leandro Trossard? I would suspect no. And I would keep hold of Leandro Trossard rather than going and signing another sort of, mid-level wide player. I think Leandro Trossard's got loads to offer still. If, though, Arsenal have funds because of another sale, because the Trossard one's not going to generate a lot, let's be clear on that. If Arsenal have funds because they've made a few other sales and done a couple of other bits of business, and that's a possibility, then of course I'd be open-minded to it. But right now, given what I expect to happen, what I believe to happen, I think I'd keep him. Jid says, just because a club buys a young player doesn't mean they're for the future. Just look at our squad and how many young players have been starting for seasons now. It's overly simplistic to think just because a player is 22, that means they can't possibly be for the here and now. No, I agree with that. But, there are players at 22, 23 years old that are fantastic, that have already peaked. And I know people will say that's crazy, but I mean, there's been loads of players over the history of football that peaked at a really young age and then got to slightly later on in their careers. And we saw a bit of a decline because either they played too much football, and their bodies were sort of shutting down a little bit by the time they got to 28, 29. I think we've seen that with Raheem Sterling, by the way. And there's not that many players out there. We're lucky to have a group of young players that are ready, that are competing, that are doing brilliantly. But that's not always the case with young players. There's generally a bit of inconsistency. Look, you got to judge every signing individually. But someone like Viktor Gyökeres is far more seasoned a striker than some of the younger options. And I think that's what we need right now. Trying to pick out a couple more of your questions from the live chat. Trying to pick out stuff that's a little bit different to what we've already been talking about. Roshan says, Sporting getting Suarez, he agrees with me, wasn't the hold-up, obviously, but it's likely to be a sign that the Gyökeres deal is near the finish line. Maybe. Some people want to take it like that, and yeah, hopefully that is the case, but we'll see. Ali says, do you think the way Sporting are acting in this Gyökeres deal would deter, I beg your pardon, clubs from doing business with them in the future? Listen, we can only go by what we read, and not always what you read is the truth, and so you have to be mindful of that. But they certainly aren't painting themselves in a great light in terms of their sort of negotiation tactics and the way they've moved the goalposts and all the rest of it. So I wouldn't be surprised if there are clubs looking on and are a little bit frustrated with that. But ultimately, if you want a player and he plays for Sporting, you're going to still go in there, aren't you? Because you prioritize the player over everybody else. Gary Griffin says, Harry, during the Arteta press conference out in Asia, he said we're still short. Does this mean we can expect more than what we think in regards to the number of signings? I think there'll be two. Well, look, if you include Mosquera, because I think we'll probably get an announcement on that this week, then if you include Mosquera, I think we'll get Mosquera, Gyökeres, and I think we'll get one more in. So I think there's 3 more to come on top of the 4 that we've already got in through the door. That's 7 signings this summer. So do I think that we'll get any more than the 7? If that's your question? No, I don't. I think that's probably where we'll stop. And I'm fine with that as long as, we get in the right players. We've brought Noni Madueke in for the attack, and people are a little bit kind of uncertain, unsure about that. Go and get me Eberechi Eze and Viktor Gyökeres, and I will call it a very, very strong window. But these final two signings, if you like, they feel like the most crucial ones. So they're going to have a big impact on how I think we view and judge the window. Augustine Ngobi says that Harry, yesterday I heard Bayern are interested in Liverpool's Luis Diaz. Do you think this would spare us or allow us to keep Trossard? Yeah, listen, I think that Trossard is one of those players that if he signs for another club, you kind of go, fair enough. If we get the money for him, you go, fair enough. You understand why the club do it, given his contract situation and given that we're expecting to bring in some other players that will be competing with him. However, if he stays, I'm absolutely fine with that as well. I'm very much in that boat with the Leandro Trossard thing. I'm not desperate for him to go, and I'm also not desperate for him to stay. I'm kind of in between. If he stays, I think he brings lots to the team and to the squad, and I actually rate Leandro Trossard probably a lot more than other people do. If he goes, I kind of see why that had to happen, and obviously what the player wants plays a massive role and part in this as well. If he's got the opportunity to go and sign for Bayern Munich on a 3-4 year contract while he's in the final year of his contract at Arsenal and unlikely to play as much, you can understand why that would appeal to the Belgian and why he might be pushing from his side. I think a lot of the speculation though around Trossard is, or it stems from the change in management. He's had a change in terms of his agent over the course of the summer. I was told on very good authority that that wasn't because he was trying desperately to force a move. It wasn't because he's desperately unhappy with the way things have gone at Arsenal so far and he wants someone to come in, ruffle feathers and change that. I was told on very good authority that that was because his agent, his representative at the time, was very, very unwell, is very, very unwell and has health issues. And as a result of that, he didn't feel that he could give the right amount of time and focus on to Leandro Trossard's career and that he had to prioritize getting better. So if that's the case, then that doesn't really indicate that a move is imminent. Now, I know that when you change agents, that means opening the doors to new relationships and new contacts, and maybe those agents have ins with certain clubs, and that can lead to moves that perhaps wouldn't have been on the cards under your previous management. But I haven't seen or heard anything to suggest that Leandro Trossard is actively pushing for an exit or that Arsenal are desperate to get rid of him. So let's just see how this one goes. Let's take a few more from the live chat box. Jid says, this is an interesting comment. He says, 7 signings is a bit of an overcorrection, if you ask me. Now, normally I'd agree with you. Okay, normally I'd agree with you. But you got to think about what those signings are coming in to do. So, start with the goalkeeper. Kepa Arrizabalaga is coming in to replace Neto. That's not correction, that's replacement. You think about the midfield, we've lost 2 and we've brought in 2. So again, is that overcorrecting the squad? I think it's clear that we've taken a slightly different direction in terms of the players that we've signed for that midfield in Norgard and Zubimendi. But those signings had to be made because we lost 2. So those 3 signings at least, I don't think can be categorized as overcorrection. But I do worry that when you change too much, and, last season was a really kind of difficult one, I think, to make sense of, because it was clear that injuries had caused us so many issues. When you have that volume of injuries over the course of a season, it's very easy to start to think that you're really short and that your team is not good enough. And yes, I think we can make the argument looking at squad numbers that this Arsenal group was a little bit short, but is it as short as it seemed last season? No. The injuries kind of really shone a light on the kind of shortcomings that we do have and did have as a squad. And that led to people maybe believing that we needed to do more this summer, than we maybe actually needed to. So I think there's a danger of falling into that trap. I think that Arsenal are right to go out and bring in multiple players. especially given the number of players that we've lost. I expect us to lose more as well between now and the end of the window. So the balance might look quite different in terms of incomings versus outgoings by the time the window closes. But some of these signings were necessities, as Mikel put it, more than they were sort of overcorrections, in my opinion. But I understand your concern, because when you change a lot, and there is a fear that we're maybe doing that this summer, you risk needing time for everybody to gel, and you risk actually taking a step back before you can take steps forward again. And given the point that we're at, people only want to see steps forward, and I completely understand that. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that's going to go. Okay, let's take one more before I sign out. Let's see what we've got. Just scrolling through the chat. While I'm doing that, don't forget to leave a like on the video if you haven't done so already. Subscribe to the channel as well if you are brand spanking new. That really, really does help. And leave us a review if you're listening to us on Apple as well. Chadwin says, Harry, where do you think we'll finish this season? Some say Liverpool are the favourites. At the moment, I make Liverpool the favourites. I do. I make Liverpool the favourites. I think they've done really good business. I think they're going to get Ekitike in as well. I think that's really good business for them. I made this point on TalkSport the other day. And sort of, listen, I like Ekitike, and I mentioned him on this podcast many, many times as a potential option for Arsenal. But I think the thing that in the end made me kind of look at Viktor Gyökeres as the number one for me was that kind of whole here and now thing, right? We need someone for the here and now. We need someone that's gonna help us. We need someone that doesn't really need time to grow. And the reason I think that Ekitike is a really good fit for Liverpool, and why they look at him and go, yeah, we can roll that dice, we can take that gamble, is because they have an incredible amount of output from their wide plays. And so if Ekitike comes in, yes, he's going to contribute goals, but he can be a bit of a Firmino as well while he finds his feet, because Mo Salah's still going to bang him in left, right, and centre. Cody Gakpo is still going to contribute. And there are others in that Liverpool squad, Luis Diaz, if he stays, that are no doubt going to score you goals. So for me, I think Liverpool are in a position where they can do that, and they can look at the longer term with Ekitike and envisage what the future looks like without having to worry so much about the here and now, because, as I say, they've got those outputs from other players within that team that we simply don't have. As great as Bukayo Saka is, and I love him, I think he's fantastic, as great as Martinelli can be, as fantastic as Odegaard is, as Rice is, all the other players that play around that forward line for Arsenal, Havertz, etc., none of them score the volume of goals that Mo Salah does. And so if Mo Salah is still going to be carrying the can for Liverpool, you can bring in a striker that you think is the one for many years to come, and you can allow him to grow into that role without it massively impacting on your team. Arsenal can't do that because we don't have that same volume of outputs. Certainly didn't last season from those wide players. So that's how I look at it. Okay, then. I am going to leave it there. Thank you all so much for joining me on this episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. Like, subscribe, leave us a review, all the rest of it. Check out the Noni Madueke video. It is available on Patreon for the next 24 hours for free. So go over and check it out. After that, it will be locked up again in the vault with all the rest of the Patreon content. Thank you for your support over there. It really, really does help. And lots of you have been signing up over the last month or so, which I'm super grateful for. It really does help me as a freelancer be able to kind of dedicate more and more time to this podcast. We'll be back later if there's any major breaking news. If not, we'll be back on Tuesday. Until then, take care of yourselves and have a wonderful day. Up the Arsenal. Goodbye.